Hey there, and welcome to Brendy's Native English Podcast. I'm Brendy, your native English guide, here to help you improve your English confidence while understanding others, just by simply listening. This podcast is made for English learners of all levels, and you don't need to understand every word. Just hit play while you're doing the dishes, walking to class, sitting on the train. You can even listen to old episodes again. You might notice that each time you listen, you understand more than the previous time. The more English you listen to, the more English you hear in your daily life, the more your brain will get used to the rhythm, vocabulary, and natural flow. Each episode is independent, and in them I'll talk about two different topics. So real life topics, opinions, experiences, gossip, all in natural, everyday English. So why not make this podcast a part of your routine and let your listening skills grow with time? Are you ready for a great conversation? Hit that subscribe button so you don't miss future podcast episodes. And without further ado, let's get started. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Brendy's Native English Podcast. I'm Brendy, and today I have a very exciting episode for all of you. I'm sure this is going to be something that sticks with you for a while, especially teachers, huh? So, for the first part, we'll talk a little bit about the open world. What is this? What is this world that's coming out? What is this whole idea of open world gaming, open world teaching, open world learning, open world environments? What is this, and how does it pertain to language education? I'm very excited to get into this. I'm very, very, very excited. And then after that, we'll get into a very completely different topic. So, let's start off with a little bit of open world gaming. When I first moved to France, there was a moment where I was really doing my best. I was getting out, I was going to the boulangerie, I was talking to people, trying to interact with French people, trying to have different experiences, go to Café des Langues, go to all these different places, but I just couldn't bridge that gap. I couldn't reach the next step in my French language proficiency. At that point, I was a C1 level, meaning that I could easily have conversations and I understood grammar, but when it came to anything informal or any nuances or anything like that, it didn't come to me very clearly. So, I had a friend who recommended that I got myself a little birthday present back in, it's a long time ago, back in the end of 2016, or was it 2017? 2017, because Nintendo Switches for me at the time were way too expensive. But I was able to afford it in the fall of 2017. So I got myself a Switch, and with it came a game called The Legend of Zelda. I'm sure you all have probably heard about it, Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. And what I told myself is, Brendy, even if you don't understand anything, go for it. Just try to do the entire game in French. And let me tell you, that was an experience. I mean, not only did I learn vocabulary that I otherwise wouldn't have learned, but it was vocabulary in deep, rich context. As I was discovering the world, as I was completing challenges, as I was going through this idea of the unknown and curiosity and trying to find new solutions to challenges or challenges that were way too difficult for me because I didn't have the right skills necessary to complete them. I was constantly thinking of new ways to approach these challenges, put me in critical thinking. And I would follow, some of the NPCs, non-playable characters. It was, following their stories, and not only was there a main story, there are all these side quests, there are all these small missions that I could do. I could help a character out by reuniting them with their family, or building a town, or just these most random quests, but realistic quests in native language learning. I would need to know how to build a fire, talking to people, difference in the registers, because you start off the game completely alone. And to be honest, that's maybe one of the problems. We'll get into that. One of the problems of the game is that, or at least the format of the game, is that you start off very, very alone and you build a community based on the people that you meet within the game. So for you go from being all alone to a register of meeting the king. So it's a very high register, very old English, French, very difficult French. I will say I have never seen the passé simple so much in my life. Oh my gosh. But this engaging content, these very diverse and very unique stories that match the personalities of the NPCs really allowed me to get a feel for French that was inaccessible to me in Nice at the time. Since then I've been able to go out and explore different places and meet lots of different people, but at the time, being in my last year of my bachelor's, it was financially impossible for me to do anything and go anywhere. The most I could do is maybe take a €7 train ticket to Monaco, but then you go there and it's all people speaking English, so do the best I can. But this open world, that's what the game is called, is open world because you have this map that you can, it's completely, it's unknown. There's no map data. You have to fill it in yourself by going to certain points and sort of registering that part of the map, and then you'll get all the data for that map area, that region, right? But this open world means that you can go anywhere, do anything, approach any challenge, really do whatever you want as you would in the real world. It's open for you to do and act and honestly approach gameplay as you want. And there are a lot of things that go with it. For me, it's sort of a mix because, yeah, you have engaging content, you have boss battles, you have big challenges, you have storylines, you have side stories, you have some random thing where you can take photos. But there are all these different types of gameplay to match all different kinds of players, right? All different types of players. And at the same time, in parallel, you have this character, this main character that you play as, his name is Link, who is completely alone. And this is the first game. The sequel to this changes a little bit, but he's completely alone, right? He's not followed by anyone. He can go up and meet people, but the story is that he woke up 100 years after his kingdom of Hyrule was completely destroyed by the enemy, Ganon. And so everything is destroyed. The villages are destroyed, people are lost, there are tombstones in different places, and there's just enemies everywhere. You have the henchmen of Ganon who have gone out and wreaked havoc all over the map. And so that's a part of your goal. If you choose to do so, that a part of your goal is to go and either destroy these enemies or to help the people save them from these enemies, basically. And it got me thinking, there's this very engaging, very hands-on, interactive content, but not all the time. And as it's an open world game, you have the option, you have the possibility to completely miss all of this engaging content and just stay in the peace of the game. Because no matter where you go, there's a sort of there's it's not intense, background video game music that we're used to. The dun 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 dun. No, none of that. Instead, you have this piano, a lone piano that mimics the loneliness of Link in the game, the solitude of Link, the main character in the game. Yeah, it's quite peaceful. Honestly, it's quite peaceful to have this dichotomy of, this action-packed, intense boss battles, fights, having to complete these very brain-racking challenges. And at the same time, you can also just explore this beautiful open area with, very calm piano music, very calm, relaxed wind going through. It allows for a much larger breadth of gameplay experiences, right? So, my thought is, what if we had this experience, this open world experience, as language education? Because if you think about it, I am native in English, right? But when we talk about certain topics, for example, if you go into physics, I am sure that I'm not C2, that I'm not fluent in physics. When we talk about physics topics, I cannot do that for now. Who knows? Maybe in 50 years I'll be a PhD candidate. Who knows? But for now, that's not what I know. That's not me. I am much more competent and much more comfortable and much more confident in other topics. For me, that makes me think that how can I consider myself what we call C2 or the most advanced bilingual fluent, whatever you want to call it. How can I consider myself that if I'm not C2 in everything? Does that make sense? I'm wondering if this idea of open world, because at the same time we sit here and we wonder, and we're so worried about, oh, I want to be fluent, I want to be fluent, but what does that even mean to you? What does that mean generally, globally? What does that mean to each person? We can get into the philosophy a little bit later, but the idea here is, why would I want to hurt my own confidence in a language that I'm very comfortable in just because I don't know certain words, I don't know certain concepts in a specific domain that's not at all pertinent or relevant to my life? What's the point in that? What's the point in hurting our own confidence when learning a foreign language if that's not something we ever want to go into? I remember I had a student who she asked me, um, "Hey, Brendy, I've been taking classes at this place, and I really, really, really wanted to work on business English. I really wanted to work on, boardroom, legal, business English because this is what my focus is in, and this is what my difficulties are. I'm very aware of my objectives. These are my objectives. But at this place where she was learning, she was stuck in a system. She was stuck in a program, honestly, a program that had her learning airplane vocabulary. I'm not talking about, airplane vocabulary like, "Would you like something to drink, sir? Maybe a coffee, maybe a tea. You might want to buckle your seatbelt. We'll have some turbulence." Not things like this, but words like the bow of the plane, the I don't even know the words, honestly, the the cockpit, the pilots. The pilots are pushing the buttons. It In what circumstance in life would this be useful for her? And for me, I understand that language and vocabulary can be cross-sectional. We can use it in different situations, different contexts, of course. At the same time, the the framework of the class was not organized in such a way that allowed her to be able to talk about whatever she wanted, She had to focus on the example sentences. She had to focus on exactly what the lesson said. And it almost made me sad. It almost depressed me to think about it because I'm thinking, imagine if this same class about airplane vocabulary, if this is what we want to do, was put into an open world language environment, okay? Not only would she be able to see the language, experience the language in the way that she wanted to, perhaps complete challenges or complete quests, using video game vocabulary, complete quests or challenges that might be too difficult for her, but at the same time, the process of going through and using critical thinking to think of solutions that could solve these challenges, the problems that she's having, or the situations that she encounters in the foreign language, in English, about using the airplane vocabulary. So, how could she use the airplane vocabulary to solve the challenge and move on while also applying it in a way that is pertinent or relevant to her? Yeah, there's also that, and this idea of not knowing how to do it. I think we as teachers, we're so focused on, oh, I need to help, I need to help, I need to help. But in the end, the aspect of thinking for it, of really work, racking your brain, sometimes I really have to rack, especially if it's in the morning. Gosh, those 8 a.m. classes. Oof, I don't miss that. Yeah. Good luck, bachelor students and master students. Oof. Anyway, going back to this topic. Like, being told everything it's one way of doing things, I think. At the same time, how much do we expect our students to retain if we're telling them all the information directly and not allowing them to think for themselves, right? This uncertainty for me unlocks learning. It doesn't block it, it unlocks it. It's this, instead of clear cut answers, teacher given clear cut answers, students, they get to navigate this ambiguity. They get to find solution in, maybe uncomfortable or unknown circumstances, unknown real life situations, and perhaps even discover even more secrets in the language through this uncertainty. So by discovering this uncertainty, by exploring the unknown, if we want to go that far, by exploring the unknown, we're allowing students to start to develop their own comfort and even confidence in a way in the unknown, in uncertain situations, especially in foreign language. That is so important because honestly, every situation in a foreign language is uncertain until it becomes certain. Every situation in a foreign language is uncomfortable until we experience it and it becomes comfortable. And maybe it never becomes comfortable. Maybe there are some situations that don't work for us, but that's our choice. And that's the thing is we not only as learners and as teachers, but as individuals, we need that experience. We need that encounter with the unknown, and we need that autonomy, that choice to be able to say, hey, I've experienced this, I've tried this, or maybe I have some past experiences with this. It's not something I want to go into. So, how about we can use some of the vocabulary or some of the words in a different context, right? But there's always ways to differentiate or to change the lessons so that the learners get the most out of it, right? The students get the most out of it. And this, going back to my story with my student, I imagine that if she had had that autonomy, that choice, that power to make her own decisions in her learning, she would have made so much more progress. And honestly, she wouldn't have needed me. I mean, not to be rude, but she wouldn't have needed me. And she wouldn't have come back to me and asked for more classes. She would have gotten everything that she needed, right? So there's this idea of uncertainty, this idea of autonomy. We talked about the idea of engaging content. And honestly, I've worked in middle schools, high schools. I've taught, primary schools online. We don't always have time to create engaging content. We have to be realistic, yeah? We have expectations to meet, we have benchmarks to meet, we have deadlines to meet. There's so many things that a brick and mortar school teacher has to do that it's just impossible to think of this engaging content all the time. So, what I recommend in this case is imagine in this open world, there are tools, ICTEs if you want, or things like lyrics training or word walk. It's tools that you create once and it continues, and you can use it and reuse it as many times as you want. There's so many of these. So rather than continually build a small arsenal, a small safe house of all of these tools, that there's all of this engaging content that can be used. Because in the end, for example, let me give you a concrete example. There is a film class that I love teaching. It is a short film. You find it on YouTube. It is 9 minutes long. I love teaching this class. I have taught it oh gosh, there were over 400, maybe 500 times now. This small class takes 1 hour. Sometimes depends on what I'm focusing on, but it can take up to 5 classes. This 9-minute video enables me to talk about all different things. Not to mention it's a silent film. So can you imagine using one tool and being crazy with it, just exploring it in very different ways? It's not always up to the teacher to engage the students because I think if you focus on the students' objectives, their desires, and what they see as their ideal class, and maybe you group them up with people who have similar interests and similar passions, similar desires in their English class, there are ways for this to succeed. It's just based on what tools we use, and if the tool is flexible and versatile, and that you can use it in many, 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 many different classroom or learning contexts. So we talked about this engaging content. And another thing about engaging content is this idea that it not only has to balance the interest, but it also has to balance stress. So when we talk about stress and learning, we're talking more about the discomfort, of course, so uncertainty. We're also talking about the level of challenge, how much does the lesson challenge and put the learner in an uncomfortable situation where either they have to think and work a little bit harder to actually get to the next step in the learning. And there's also this question of, curiosity. And I think that's also the most important, not just by using the same tool again and again, it can elicit curiosity from the start. But if the goal, if the point of watching it doesn't change each time, if the focus doesn't change each time, then the curiosity really starts to dissipate, starts to fade. So fast or engaged content that balances both stress and interest, stress meaning difficulty, personal investment, and curiosity. This idea of maintaining motivation through this engaging content. And like I said with the Legend of Zelda game, the engaging content is also paralleled by the calm, very relaxed piano, a very relaxed session. So all this to say, every single class doesn't need to be an intense lecture. Every single class doesn't need to be an intense, we're doing 50 things today. No, 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 no. The reason that these classes can be so powerful is if they're paired with that kind of solitude. It could be lone work, it could be projects, it could be something that allows them to take a breather. Because I know that in high school, I had a very good teacher, and that she always allowed us to take a break every now and then. I remember sometimes, oof, 8 o'clock in the morning going to this class. Oh, man, I was, it was not easy. But she was always there. She always had the answers. She knew what, and which way to guide us. And I think that was a big part of allowing us to find our own route, especially since we had to create projects for the International Baccalaureate, the IB. We had to think of projects. We had to think of what route we were going to take with our internal assessment, with our independent projects, basically. And by running it by her, it allowed us to kind of get that feedback. So not only is this engaging content something that we experience in the classroom, but it's also something that we experience and create for ourselves, right, as learners. And it's also, this idea of getting feedback is sort of this, it's a part of this co-creation of solutions, right? You're not just making solutions for yourself. You don't have to be alone in your brainstorming of creating solutions. That can be something you do with others. So with the teacher and students can work together to create solutions. One of my favorite approaches in classrooms is this idea of a hypothesis, non-hypothesis. So yes, it's true. I know if, for example, a student gives me a sentence that sounds a bit strange to me, of course, I know what it should be, or even if I don't know what it should be, I say, all right, write it on the board. We're going to think of how we can adjust it. You write some non-examples, some examples that fit the pattern of what's more natural, and then some examples that don't really fit the pattern of what's more natural. And then from there, you can branch out and it can create a whole class. One sentence can create a whole class. So this co-creation of solutions, working with the students to be able to learn from each other, because honestly, there's so many things I've learned from my students, be it in physics, be it in post-production. There's so many things I've learned. And it allows me to kind of decentralize my role as a teacher. So I'm not the spotlight, the center of attention. Knowing me, I love being the center of attention. So it's honestly a great experience. And it's a great exercise for me in humility and humbleness and taking myself out of the picture. Because in the end, yeah, we can all learn from each other, of course. The learners are the ones who are there to learn. And by creating an environment that is open and allows them to attack their learning and to explore their learning and to grow from the learning and to expand on their learning in the way that they feel most comfortable and they like the best and they prefer, that is where real learning happens. Yeah, that is it. That is it. And I don't believe that there's a certain methodology that teachers have to employ in order for this open world language environment to exist. You know, I think that one thing as teachers that is really important for us to get over, to forget about, is this idea that teachers cannot make mistakes. Teachers cannot make errors. Oh my gosh, the number of times I've made a mistake. I mean, even in my YouTube videos, there are so many like really small mistakes. I think chaos, I kept saying cow, cow, cow. What does that mean? We're okay. It's okay to make mistakes. And the thing is, by modeling this behavior that it's okay to make mistakes, we allow the learners, we enable the learners to feel empowered by the mistakes. Rather than taking, if we take the example of mistake, it's a non-natural sentence. we can change that to, let's say there's just a blatant mistake, like a learner just spits out, let's see, I go for 6 hour to yesterday. It's just, I understand the context, but it's the grammar, yes. Rather than seeing that as a thing and saying, "What are you talking about? Oh my gosh, what are you talking about? Past tense? Do you remember the past tense? We studied this, we did this." Rather than using it as an opportunity to scream like you hear in like back in the good old days of scream out music, rather than using that as an example to practice your screaming in classrooms, maybe this is an opportunity for the learners to co-create a solution. So this becomes the challenge, right? The learner goes up, puts the sentence on the board. He works, maybe you can put the learners in different groups, or even all together. You have a few learners who come over as advisors to come up and throw back solutions. Maybe one learner completely solves the thing in less than a minute. Perfect, excellent. That means this learner is ready or native, which also happens in some classrooms. That also gives us the opportunity to expand, right? So we've discovered the problem. Now, growing from the problem, what other sentences can be made? Okay, so this learner gives an example. Let's expand on that. Okay, let's choose one or two of these sentences and create a crazy story about it. What you can do from that is either to write the story on the board. So we focus a lot more on writing, and students get up and down and up and down. That we have movement in the classroom. Or you can have each student get into small groups and they work on a story together. And there you go. You have no time for other things to do. Bam, you're welcome. There's your lesson for the day. So it's this idea that time-consuming failures are essential to learning, and this is open world. To summarize all of this, I want to talk about the key aspects of this open world language environment. That is, first, this idea that time consuming failures are essential. Essential. Uncertainty unlocks learning. By feeling uncertain, by feeling in solitude in gaming, solitude in learning, it allows us to think of solutions. And it's not only solutions do not have to be alone. Solutions can be co-created, can be reflected together with the students, yeah? And not only that, but you can take learning a little bit further, depending on your time restraints, of course, and your imagination. But this idea of challenges and NPCs, if you really want side stories in language learning, you could, let's say you have an inside joke and you want to keep going with that and create a story from it, really turn that into something that has its own side story. Challenges that you do in class, side story, these are things that are memorable. These are things that allow students to really go further in their learning. They can go anywhere with it, right? And this vast engaging content that not only balances the difficulty, the curiosity, and the personal investment, it maintains motivation, it builds motivation, it maintains motivation. Pairing this with the importance of time-consuming failures, of making mistakes, you're building confidence right there. Maybe subconsciously, but at the same time, you're building confidence. You're allowing students to see that, hey, damn, I can do this, right? And in the end, I think one of the most important things is to take your role as a teacher, take our roles as teachers, and kind of give it back to the students. Let students enjoy and explore their open world of learning the way that they themselves want to. Because just like they want to explore their world of open world language learning, I want to explore my open world of open world language teaching. And that's where we'll stop for today. So we'll stop here for the first segment, and in this next segment, we'll talk about something completely different, and that is how to feel comfortable, what to do when you're out of your comfort zone. So take care and be back in just a second. Thank you. Hey, welcome back. So, in this segment of our episode, I'd like to switch gears a bit, and talk about comfort zones. Before we get into that, I want to read a poem by C. Joy Bell C. Something I researched a few weeks ago, and it's honestly the inspiration for this topic. Let me get into it. Yeah. I have realized it is during the times I am far outside my element that I experience myself the most, that I see and feel who I really am the most. I think that's what a comet is like. You see, a comet is born in the outer realms of the universe, but it's only when it ventures too close to our sun or to other stars that releases the blazing tail behind it and shoots brazen through the heavens. And meteors become sucked into our atmosphere before they burst like firecrackers and realize that they're shooting stars. That's why I enjoy taking myself out of my own element, my own comfort zone, and hurling myself out into the unknown, because it's during those scary moments, those unsure steps taken, that I'm able to see that I'm like a comet hitting a new atmosphere. Suddenly, I illuminate magnificently, and fire dust begin to fall off of me. I discover a smile I didn't know I had. I uncover a feeling that I didn't know existed in me. I see myself. I'm a shooting star. I'm a meteor shower. I'm not going to die out. I guess I'm more like a comet then. I'm just gonna keep on coming back. Whew! Talk about the poem. But there are so many things we can talk about here, right? Comfort zones. Let's get into that. You know, being in our comfort zone allows us to stay complacent, to stay sure, to feel safe. If I had stayed in my comfort zone and not traveled all over the world to live in a foreign country and do my own thing, if I had stayed in my own place, I'm absolutely sure that I would be a completely different person, you know? I think we can all say that for ourselves. I remember the person that I was back in the US was a completely different person than I am now. First of all, I was not a thinker. God, you asked me to think, and I say I'm going to bed. So at least that's one thing that hasn't changed. You know, my personality hasn't completely changed by stepping out of my comfort zone. I'm still a heavy napper, yeah. But I think that by taking that first step and traveling first to Turkey and experiencing life, love, studies, work, travels, friends, family in Turkey, and then moving to France and understanding that, wow, there's really so much that I don't know about this world. It's so exciting, right? It is so exhilarating to think of all the different types of ways of living and ways of experience life, ways of singing, ways of teaching, ways of learning, ways of reading, ways of sleeping, ways of loving, ways of eating. Oh God, that's my favorite one. I have to say that was my favorite. It's There's so many things that I have experienced by stepping out of my comfort zone. And listen, I'm not going to sit here and encourage you or push you to go out of your comfort zone, because who knows what you're experiencing in life? You know, it's not my job it's not my job, it's not my role. And honestly, I don't want to sit here and push you out of your comfort zone. But I do want to talk a little bit about the poem that I just read. You know, I want to go back to it. It says that it is during the times I am far outside my element that I experience myself the most. Times I'm far outside my element that I experience myself the most. So, a lot can be said about this. Do we experience a greater life by being outside of our element? If we do something that normally we tell ourselves, oh, hell no, does that allow us to experience life in a way that's different or better or worse, or how does that change us, you know? I think being outside of our element, being outside of my element, pushes me into this growth zone And I think the first few times of stepping out of my element, I feel fear. I felt fear, and I honestly still do sometimes. Felt fear about going, taking one step further, trying something new. The first time I had lamb brain, oh my gosh, I wanted to vomit. But on another note, the first time I had what we call in French boudin noir, it looked like a black sausage. My friends at the time said, "Oh, just eat it, just see what happens." I ate it and I said, "Hot damn, this is good." Yeah, I ate the whole thing. I ate theirs. I sorry again. Sorry, this friends if you're listening to me. And I'm sitting here like, "Oh, this is amazing. I'm so glad I tried it." And that's when they said, "Hey, you know what that is, by the way?" I said, "No, what is it? Tell me." They go, "Lamb blood." Like, bleh, bleh. Oh my gosh. Mm, But despite knowing afterwards, I'm kind of happy that I tried it because now I really like it. And even with the lamb brain, there's this soup. I think it's lamb brain. Anyway, there's this soup called kelle in Turkey and also in Turkish. It is my favorite soup. I can eat it all day long. If we go out on the night in the town, it's my favorite thing to eat before going to bed. I love it. And this thing, it's sort of the same situation, except that my friends told me ahead of time what it was. I said, let's try it. I believe that the fact that I could eat lamb blood or sheep blood enabled something in me. It turned on something in me that allowed me to say, hey, it sounds disgusting, but if it's on the menu and this is a reputable restaurant and my friends like it, why not just try it? Why not go for it? Furthermore, the C. Joy PLC talks more about, this idea of a comet. When it ventures too close to our sun, to other stars, it releases that blazing tail behind it. I think that I'm really focused on food because I'm a foodie. I love food. I will eat all day long. Whatever you give me, I will num 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 num. I love it. And I think that's where the blazing tail came out. And we find our in, as we say, the quote unquote the in, and that's what allowed me, perhaps us, if I can generalize, to feel comfortable outside of our comfort zone, right? I think that by taking the first step and traveling to Turkey, meeting friends, realizing how similar we are, realizing how much fun and how much I was enjoying myself just being around them, and going to France and finding a completely different communities and still having fun, still enjoying myself, and not enjoying myself around alcohol or whatever that is. No, but enjoying myself just sitting in the park with them, enjoying myself, having a birthday party for my cat, just doing something together. It makes me realize that there are so many things that might make us afraid, but in the end, by not doing it, we stay afraid. Hmm, that was deep. She goes on to say, because it's during those scary moments, the fear I was just talking about, those unsure steps taken, that I'm able to see that I'm like a comet hitting a new atmosphere. Suddenly I illuminate magnificently and fire dust begins to fall off of me. That's a pretty big image, isn't it? This idea of fire dust falling off of you. Don't try that at home, by the way. Don't try illuminating yourself either. I don't recommend that. just just a little disclaimer for all of you people. Please don't sue me. So there's so many unsure things that we can do in life. And I think one of the most unsure things that I did was when I took a small Erasmus to this place. It's a farmland in the middle of France. It's a wonderful city, honestly. I love it. It's a city called Le Mans. It's where they have the 24 hours of Le Mans, if you know it. And Honestly, it is the middle of nowhere, but by pushing myself, because at the time I had a thesis to write, and I didn't want to have other classes to take at the same time. So I decided for myself, hey, let's just do it. Let's take some pretty simple classes and then just finish the thesis and enjoy myself and see what it's like, right? And that was one of the best decisions I've made. Honestly, it's not only did I meet friends that stay with me for life, I ended up writing. So they put me in all French classes because apparently my advisor, not the one in the US, but the one in France, had very big expectations, very great expectations. Thank you for me, and I was put in all French for native speakers classes. It was a lot of fun, a huge challenge. That was definitely that fear, those scary moments were definitely there every single moment. I think in 6, 7 months, I might have slept 2 hours. But I enjoyed myself. I enjoyed myself. In the end, I got so into this class by this phenomenal professor. She's still a professor. She writes books about the Little Prince, and she's really just a phenomenal person, phenomenal teacher. And her class, by taking her class, I realized things about French and not only vocabulary expressions, but I realized things about French and about myself in French that I wouldn't have realized. And that is that I can do it. Damn it. I can do French. I can speak French. And she gave me such a very focused course. It was in, what was the class again? It was either children's literature or French literature. I don't quite remember what the class was, but I remember it had to have been French literature because the play that she had us read, she gave us a choice of different plays, and we had to write an essay on one of them. And the plays that she gave us were very dark. So I mean, I know it's pretty hardcore here in France, and that they go pretty hardcore at a young age. But I remember this after reading it. It was the Don Juan of Lenau, which is a German, which who was a German playwright, and his rendition, his version of Don Juan was absolutely phenomenal. I got so into it that I ended up doing this huge linguistic analysis and going all into all these different parts and highlighting the musicality behind it, and then at the end focusing on the fact that the author, because in the end, Don Juan does normally he well, normally there's an ending to it, right? But the play actually just stops, and Don Juan doesn't get his ending, his happy ending, because Lenau actually committed suicide, and so neither of them at the same time is sort of this tragic moment where neither of them get that cathartic moment, or maybe they did, but this whole thinking, this wouldn't have happened. I wouldn't have fallen so in love with this play had I not gone, had I not stepped out of my comfort zone and said, let's just do it, let's just try all classes in French. Why not? Why not? And by doing this, I not only experienced all these different outings, I went to Dinan, I ate the best flan I've ever had in my life. Let me tell you, if ever you go to Dinan, Dinan, you have to try their flan. I don't care where you get it, their flan is amazing. I will rave about it for years. Oh my gosh. That might be the reason, honestly. We just don't eat too much because you might get diabetes. So good, so good. That's also the reason why I met my current Zumba instructor. That's also the reason why I was able to write this essay, which I almost got a perfect score on. The score doesn't matter for me. The most important is that I just felt so confident coming out of it. Coming back to the US for, just a month to graduate and then go back to France, it was so cathartic for me to hear that my French professors back at my home university, just to hear them say, "What? Now you're fluent, so we can speak to you completely in French." That is such a badass moment, honestly. Very, very nice feeling, yeah. So, all this to say, just as C. Joy Bell C. talks about the scary moments, the unsure steps taken, the f- the fact that she's able to see herself as a comet because she's going to keep on coming back, keep on pushing out of her comfort zone, keep on trying new things, experiencing life in a new language, experiencing the world in a new language in different sites, going to different places, maybe living in the country for whoa, it's just an extended period of time, trying something that is outside of your comfort zone. Even if I'm going really out there, but going out of your comfort zone could be just, you know, going to another region of your country. I remember I took a road trip from my city, this is a long time ago, from my city in the US on the East Coast, and I went all the way to Salt Lake City in a moving truck with my two friends and the two dogs, full of things. And it was so, because who wants to sit in a moving truck for like a week, 2 weeks? I think it was only a week and a half that we were in the moving truck. But we traveled the entire way there, and that was an experience. But I was able to meet people I would never have met. I was able to meet Mormons for the first time. I had never met any Mormons in my city back in the States, but I did not ever experience that. And that's just one small part. And, going into a hotel where every single person in the hotel was wearing a MAGA hat, and you're over here like, oh my gosh, I don't know what's going to happen, but having sharing a meal and having an open conversation, honestly, go for it, people. Go for it, people. Really take a small step, take a step, if not a big step, a small step out of your comfort zone. Try it. Make mistakes. Understand that the mistakes you make are just part of the learning process and allows you just to limit your fear zone and go into your growth zone. I'm so happy I did it. And honestly, I think you will be too. Try it. You love yoga? Try yoga in a new region. Try it with a new teacher. Go to another country and try yoga in a new country. I am so happy that I did. I know you will be too. So, all that said, I want to thank you so much for listening to this episode of Brendy's Native English Podcast. I have had so much fun, and I'm really having so much fun doing this with you guys. It's so nice to just speak openly like this. If you have any recommendations for some topics you'd like for me to talk about, don't hesitate to shoot me an email, write a message down in the comments. Anything's up for grabs. And as always, there's no judgment. Let's be kind, my people. So thank you again. All right. Take care now. Bye.